Hey, hey. It's down to the last two bits. We're going to make the veil and we're going to make the bouquet. In order to do that, I'm going to take some of my scrap material. We're just going to hem the edges, wrap it around for the bouquet. I'm going to look up a reference picture for the veil. So the important thing when you're looking up reference images is to make sure you get the actual outfit and not like other people's versions. So it is an organza. It comes from about halfway down her head to about hip length, it looks like. Oh, I thought it was 2 tiers. Okay, well, we're just gonna go to YouTube and watch the actual scene because that is the safest way of doing it. Okay, that is good to know. We saw it from the back. It's one length and it just hits the skirt, so it's just past. Yes, okay, it's 2 layers and the top layer is like this much shorter than the bottom layer, and the bottom layer actually goes further down her back, as far as I can tell. Yeah, 2 layers, about waist and a little lower, and quite full. Okay, that was a great shot. So we're gonna do the veil first, because it is the harder one to do. So now obviously this is not long enough. So what we're gonna do is figure out what length we want it to be, and I'm going to do that by just holding it up and figuring out how long it should be. So if I'm putting it partway on my head, it should come down to about here. I'm going to line that up with the edge. And we'll cut across. Now in retrospect, I should have done it twice this length so that we'd have one to fold over. So that's what we're going to do for the next one, because that was a mistake. The other option, which is a better idea, is to measure this. Of course it's more than this. It's about the length of the table. So if I do one that's just under twice the length of the table, that'll be the length I want to split in half. Because we want double the length so that it can fold in half. So there's 1 and 2. And I'm going to cut straight across. And we're going to just directly sew on the next side piece and then trim it once it's attached. So there are many different ways to do this. I'm not going to worry about making this into a tiny seam. I want it to be the least visible possible. So all I'm going to do is lay one on top of the other and do a straight stitch all the way down. And then hopefully once it's gathered, you won't notice it as much. Now I'm hoping I have enough to do, I do not. Cool, cool, cool. If I attach that piece that I accidentally cut the first time, will it be enough? Let's see. Which if I had measured these all ahead of time, I could have made sure this was in the middle and less noticeable. Oh well. Deep breaths. And then I'm just gonna walk these together and see if it's long enough. It is! Huzzah! Okay. So I wouldn't have a seam there if I hadn't accidentally cut it. Cool, cool, cool. I was not thinking. Okay. We're going to attach this. As I said, I want this really, really wide. And once this is attached, it will be time to gather it up. Now, I do have a note of where this ends here, and what I'm going to do is fold this in half lengthwise. And I know that I want the gathering to be just past this, so that this seam is hidden underneath. So I'm marking with a pin where I'm going to want that middle seam to be. And then I'm going to do the same over here, making sure I get just the one side. Should mark it both on the inside, so I will switch up where that pin is. There we go. And then I'm going to put this to the side very slightly while I grab a thicker thread. I've got a thicker embroidery thread that I'm going to use for this because it's going to make it way easier. I'm going to put my machine on a zigzag, nice and wide, and then I'm going to knot the end of this. Now for the tougher part, just because there's a lot of fabric, I'm going to zigzag all the way across this line. However, I'm going to do it the other way so that the least amount is shoved up in there. Just going to kind of tuck this in and ahead, get it out of the way. What I'm going to do is zigzag over this thread, so the thread is in the middle of the zigzag. So I did back tack this because I want to make sure that the zigzag does not come out. And I'm being very careful to make sure that it is not catching this thread. What I like to do when I get to 1/3 is I'm just going to gently pull this thread, and you'll see that it gathers it all for us. And it's nice and thick. This way I don't use as much of this thread. And now we're gonna do the other third. And you can honestly pull in that thread anytime you want. You can also do this gathering by hand with a really long basting stitch, or you can do it normally and then gather it just with a long basting stitch and you pick one thread and gather it. I don't recommend that way specifically because it is very easy for the thread to break when you're gathering this much. And I'm going to back tack again. There we go. So I've gathered this all up. You can see there's a bit on this side that doesn't want to gather because of the knot, and all I have to do is gather it from that side. And with this tight, I'm going to cut the thread down here. I'm going to tighten it as much as I can and tie it off. I like to do it a couple of times just to really make sure it's not going anywhere, and then I'm going to cut off that extra thread. And on the other side, I'm going to do something very similar. I'm going to gather it down as far as it'll go, and then I'm going to tie it off. So this part with the seam is going to be our bottom, and this is going to be our top. So that it sits a little shorter. Perfect. So in order to attach this now, I've got the bottom facing the bottom and the top facing the top. I'm going to take my comb, and when we put it in, the comb's going to face this way against the head so it molds to the head. So we want to sew it in like this. Now I say like this because you always want the extra to be over so that it helps hide the comb when it's folded over. And we're gonna sew it from this side. And basically with a hand sewing needle, we're just gonna sew it along here. You can also just hot glue it to this if that is your preference. I always prefer to sew things instead of hot gluing them because hot glue can get really messy really fast. And also I just don't trust it as much. So I'm using thread that's been doubled over, and I'm gonna start just inside the edge. And we're gonna loop through that tooth. And then because I want this to go over the top, I'm gonna loop over the top as well. Trying to make sure it's going where I want it to. And I try to do each one 2 or 3 times. There we go. And then I'm just gonna repeat that, going in and out, over the comb, through the comb. And I'm using my other hand to keep this folded flat the way I want it to. And then up and over the comb. I'm sure there are other ways to do this. This is just how I'm doing it. Now, there is quite a bit more thread, but not enough to do what I want, so I'm going to tie this off and get more thread. And you never want your thread to be longer than your arm by too much, because then it's going to be impossible to deal with. It'll just start snagging on you. So like a medium length thread is the best way to do your hand sewing. And to tie a knot, I've been over this before, but we'll go over it again. I like to pinch the bottom of the thread between my index finger and thumb, wrap it around my finger so that it overlaps. Then, Then, with my thumb down, I roll the thread back and forth together, then pinch just above where all those rolls are and pull down, and that gives me a nice knot. The more you practice, the better it is and the faster you'll get, but I find that's the easiest way of making a knot. Ooh, and I'm actually just going to jump to the other side because I want to secure that down and make sure that this is the exact length that I want, which it is, and secure it up top as well. Okay, and then we just gotta work through it. And what I like to do to get the needle through the bottom, the more you do it, the more practice you have, the better you'll be at it, but I put the needle through just a little bit and try and feel where that plastic edge is. When I first started sewing, I was very bad at knowing where my other hand was and therefore where the needle was gonna come out. And I sometimes still have issues, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. Oh, and sometimes it'll get caught on the teeth, and just take a breath and uncatch it. Also, if you want to buy a red veil, or you just want to use pins on the day to stick it into your hair, or you don't even want to do a veil, that is totally okay. You can cosplay however way you want, so long as you're not hurting anyone. And there we go. A veil, it's nice and wide like hers is, but not too wide. I'm very happy with that. Now we're going to look at these. The first thing we're gonna do is take off the labels. These are all from the dollar store. I got two different. I got these chrysanthemums. Where are the chrysanthadads? And the other chrysanthemum parents. And I also got these carnation bushes. They were both $1.75 each, but I really liked the tonality, like the colors, and I liked the fullness when they were all together. So taking off all of those and all the extra bits. So the first thing I'm going to do is put them together in a pleasing to the eye way. I think that's what I like the look of. So I'm going to tape around this. The tape's going to be covered. Any tape will do. Masking tape, this is a cloth tape. Just something that's going to actually stick. And I want it to spread a little bit here. So we're gonna wrap it with fabric from here to here. So I'm gonna grab a piece of fabric, see how much I need, then we will fix the edges. And this is just extras left over from the dress. Okay, so that's like more than enough. I'm just gonna sew this in a square. Okay, so I'm just going to sew all the way around, leaving about 1 inch open. And we're going to trim all of the corners. I'm not too worried about how much bulk there is from extra fabric because I do want this to be a little thicker than it currently is. This is not meant to be perfect. It's mostly going to be covered by my hands with the gloves. This is just in case. And I'm just using my fingers to get the corners out. And I think I want to end with this. So what I'm going to do is just tuck that all in and stitch this down. You can do it by hand if you don't want to see it. This is a very small detail. I probably won't even use the bouquet for every single shot. And I'm going to use a tiny bit of tape just to get it started. And I'm just kind of using my hand to get it. I kind of like that little fold over. I'm pinning it in 2 spots just to hold it. And then I'm going to grab my thread. And because my knot I want underneath, I'm just going to start the thread under and then wrap over. And I'm going to go through the material and come out on that stitching line. And we're just going to do that all the way up. And that'll just hold the edge nicely in. I can take that pin out now. And if you want this to be perfect, like take the time to iron it, take the time to make it nice. I'm not too worried because I know realistically you're not going to see this. At least one of my hands is going to be over it at all times. And when I watched the clip, I really couldn't tell you if she had anything around her flowers or not. I'm just basing it on the fact that at actual weddings they do. And there you have it, a nice easy bouquet, and afterwards you can go in and just kind of loosen it up a little bit. Ooh. So I'm just bending the flowers out just a little bit to see more of them and get more out of it. There we go, what a lovely bouquet. Red bouquet for a red wedding.